Skyrim has many abilities and weapons to dispatch enemies, and proper planning will always aid you in combat. But what if you decided to use a weapon that had a mind of its own and with a limited amount of ammo? A weapon that threw planning straight off a cliff. Today I'll be answering the question of can you beat Skyrim only using the Wabbajack. Let's get into it. Our story begins with a carriage ride through the countryside. I haven't played vanilla Skyrim in ages and I forgot exactly how long this carriage ride is. It's 6 minutes of this before you can even make your character. This is one of those design choices I will never understand. After watching the horse thief make a break for it and fail in his own challenge, I can finally create my character. I chose High Elf for their skill in magic and the ability to regenerate magicka. Went through and tried to create the embodiment of nightmares, but Skyrim's character customization is nothing like Oblivion's. After settling with the design, I named myself Sheomorath because only chaos and chance would occur from here on out. I watched someone get decapitated and pushed my way through the line for my turn. Alduin decided it wasn't my time and swooped in, bringing meteors with him. I took advantage of the attack and ran. I made my way into a castle, watched a guy get bonked by an entire wall, and then with the help of Raulo, freed my hands and the real challenge could begin. Since this is a Wabbajack only run, the only kind of damage I can do to enemies is with said weapon. But since I have to go get it first, I just have to keep myself alive and run. Luckily, Raulof is an absolute unit at killing Imperials. I learned I could dance with my hands and escorted Raulof through the dungeon, getting him to fight for me while I healed and watched with amazement. He fought rooms of guards, spiders, and even a bear, allowing us to finally make our way into Skyrim and begin the journey to get the Wabbajack. I made my way to the carriage outside of Whiterun and bought a ride to Solitude. I had a meeting with a crazy person who would tell me how to find my prize. Solitude had a crazy reception waiting for me. Some guy was getting decapitated, so I got front row seats. I danced for his death and went to find Dervinin. He knew the whereabouts of the Wabbajack and handed me a hip bone to get me into the part of the palace. Now, I'm not one for asking questions, but when someone hands you a hip bone, you don't ask them anything. I strolled over to the palace and walked right in. It was kinda crazy how a random citizen could just walk into a royal palace and not get attacked by the guards. After asking around, I found where the Wabbajack was kept. I made my way inside and got teleported to a lunch party. I chatted up Sheogorath and asked him for his special stick, but he told me I had to help him out first by meddling with someone's psyche. He granted me the staff, and this was only a tease of the effects I would see later down the line. I turned guards into wolves to attack a man watching a fight, joined in with a kid to cheer on a goat fighting a hag, and even watched tiny people fight before gifting one of them the power to turn massive. I did get a little carried away at changing a man's nightmares into dreams and quickly died from meddling in others' brains. After resurrecting and completing my tasks, I chatted up the Prince of Madness himself and he let me leave with the Wabbajack in hand. The official run could now begin. I went back to Helgen to see if I needed to do anything there, but decided I was better off to make my way straight to Whiterun. On the way I tested out the Wabbajack on some bandits, and between electrocution, vaporization, and summoning a Daedric guard, this weapon could do it all. But I would soon come to find out that with that limited ammo, I would need to pick my targets way more carefully. I made my way to Whiterun and straight to the Jarl. His bodyguard tried to intimidate me with a slow walk, weapon drawn, but I had seen a man melt before my eyes, so I wasn't scared. I told the Jarl the recent dragon attack and he volunteered me to go fetch a dragonstone for his court wizard. I didn't know it yet, but this guy would be pivotal to the run for his stock of filled soul gems. But it wouldn't hurt to steal some of them in the meantime. I accepted the quest and headed out for Bleak Falls Barrow. The entrance looked like it was on the other side of a mountain, and normally you would go around and stick to the path, but this is Skyrim, and through lots of left and right movements while spamming the jump button, I ascended. I climbed the hell out of that mountain. Once I made it to the peak, it was a hop, skip, and a jump away. I had cut my commute in half. The temple began like any other, being chased by bandits right from the start. I spammed restoration spells while being attacked during puzzles. It seemed easier than wasting attacks. Further in, I tried to get a bandit to cut through the spiderweb for me, but even after standing on the web, I had to kill him and punch my way through. The same thing occurred with the spider in the next room, but I had to punch that web too. I watched Arvel try to fight the Draugr, and he was doing alright until he got teamed up on. Lured some idiots through their own traps, and then came face to face with the Overlord himself. I tried to use the Wabbajack, but he was stronger than he looked. I would have to resort to tactics for this one. I led him and his friends into their own trap once again, and claimed the tablet for my own. I was the champion, now I just had to get back to Whiterun. I made my way back and ran into a problem that would cause issues throughout the run. The Wabbajack uses soul gems to recharge itself. Soul gems, if bought from vendors, can be very expensive. Soul gems can be found in the wild, but they're usually empty. The only way to fill one is with the Soul Tap spell, which stores the victim's soul in a gem if they die in a certain amount of time. Due to the randomness of the Wabbajack, I can't rely on that, so I would have very, very limited ammunition throughout the run, so vendors would be my bread and butter to survive. Or I could rely on the sad saps put in charge of helping me, like the dragon outside of Whiterun. I watched as the soldiers slowly but surely dispatched the dragon. I claimed the victory for myself by stealing its soul and items and reported back for a job well done. Managed to score some fill gems with the money I had received and told the Jarl of my heroic endeavor. He told me to go meet with the Greybeards for more shout training and so I could learn more about my destiny. I headed out and while on my path got attacked by some wolves on the climb to the Greybeards. I never noticed how many wolves there actually were on this path. After arriving, they taught me the gotta go fast shout and told me of a dungeon housing a horn I needed to retrieve to fully test my inner Sonic. Upon arriving at the dungeon, 2 novice magic users gave me a rough time. I turned them into rabbits only for them to transform back. One got blasted to death while the other turned into a mud crab. This weapon wasn't throwing me any bones. She transformed back and summoned a friend, and after a couple of laughs, the Wabbajack had its fill and disintegrated the poor novice. I did a 6 Sonic dash through some gates further in and then lured spires to trial by fire while I healed through all of the pain. I came to the chest to claim my prize and turns out I took so long to get here that someone had stolen my horn, but at least they were kind enough to leave a note saying where to find it. Arriving in Helgen was different this time around. Turns out cultists were looking for me and they even attacked in a public area. Now, normally I'm the one being killed by guards, but man did these cultists get killed. One guard even did a proper execution on one. After scoring some new clothes with magic restoration, I made it into the tavern to find the horn thief. Turns out it was a member of the Blades and she wanted to help me with my dragon problem, but first I'd have to help her out. She had a beef with the Thalmor elves and said she had to infiltrate a house party, but first she talked about the dragons being resurrected. This I had to go see for myself. But I kinda wish I didn't. I watched the dragon crawl out of its tomb while Delphine wasn't exactly doing enough damage to kill it, so I regrettably powered up the Wabbajack with thousands of dollars of gems to take it down. I did get some bones and scales to sell, but it didn't offset my cost of emission. The Wabbajack may be powerful and chaotic, but damn is it expensive to use. Delphine said she could now commence with the party crash, but first I had to go stock up on gems. I tried to steal from a store, but the owners used black magic to never obscure their faces, so I went legit and traded with a different store, before making my way to the contact to get me inside the party. I gave him my items to smuggle in and off I went to get ready. I had to look the part, so I had to put on some party clothes and hopped in a carriage and headed out. No time was wasted as I got to mingling with the crowd. I even bought a drink to help loosen things up. Turns out another patron needed the drink more than I did, and he started causing a commotion, and now I could sneak in and find out what the Thalmor knew. I say sneak in, but it quickly turned into a mad dash into finding the intel. I got into a sticky situation where I had to use the Wabbajack, and it couldn't have helped more. I turned one of the elves into a Daedric guard, and he single-handedly started killing the others. People were turning to ash, electricity and fire were everywhere, tight rooms in the Wabbajack make for crazy light shows. After completely trashing a room in bodies of ash and magic residue, and watching a troll murder an elf, I had the intel I needed and pieced out. It was time to regroup and plan the next course of action. Delphine told me of a contact that I had to go find in the Ratways under Riften, but this task was anything but easy. I bought a ride and got stopped by guards and then let go because a dragon began to fly overhead. It left us alone and I was allowed to enter into the city. A man approached me and told me he'd help me find who I was looking for if I did a little something for him. He wanted me to steal a ring and place it on somebody else. I failed at lockpicking and got caught by the guards, got reprimanded by my lack of sneak skills, and I was given directions on where to find the Ratway. To prove my skills in breaking and entering, I tried to pry open a door into a shop, but failed so much that I attracted the guards' attention. Now, because this was a small fine, normally you'd pay it off, but with the Wabbajack so expensive, I ran. I ran to my death and got a terrible autosave. Luckily, I jumped around and made my way past the guards into the Ratway. Scavengers were down here and tried to kill me. Not wanting to waste ammo, I ran again. They started fighting anyone and everything down here, so I had an idea. There's a guild down here that would hopefully save the day. I led them through the sewers and sure enough, the entire guild retaliated and shanked the shit out of them. However, when I tried to do the same with the Thalmor, they let them walk straight on through and didn't help at all. I was on my own, and so I decided to run yet again. Sadly, after being cornered by a magic user, I had to use the Wabbajack. I found Esbern and persuaded to let me inside to discuss private matters. This took some time, but eventually I was allowed access. I told him of the plight at hand and he agreed to walk with me back to Delphine, but leaving this place was going to be difficult, as I forgot the guards outside. I channeled my inner rabbit and bounced and ran while healing where I could. One guard was so persistent that I led her to a bandit camp to be taken care of, only for the bandit camp to turn on me and add to the chase. Some wolves helped me out and killed the bandit and then also proceeded to hunt me. I just couldn't catch a break. I contracted a disease and ran as far as I could only to get fucking ambushed by scavengers. Was the whole world after me? Some more wolves joined in, and in an attempt to hide, I bumped into a spellcaster. I had had enough and used the almighty Wabbajack to cause him to explode into money. Finally, my first real break. Once the coast was clear, I made my way back to Delphine and Esbern and told us of Skyhaven Temple. To defeat Alduin, we had to learn his secrets. So Esbern, Delphine, and I headed out to Skyhaven Temple. Esbern decided to become god and float around, and then I helped giants kill a dragon. I've never sat and watched some of these random events, but I've got to say it really fleshes out the world. And to one-up that, the game had 2 dragons chase me, so I lured them to a Forsworn camp and watched as they fought bravely to kill 1. Many died, but I found the cave entrance, so I call that a win-win. We traveled deep into the dungeon and found that long ago a shout was used to combat Alduin, so I had to do the same. It was time to revisit the Greybeards. They told me that there was such a shout, but I'd have to go talk to the leader of the Greybeards to learn it. Turns out, the leader was in fact the dragon. He couldn't teach me the shout, but told me that using the Elder Scroll to go back in time could. Marty McFly, step aside. I was going time traveling. Going off a tip, I went to the College of Winterhold and asked around about the scroll. Not only did they know about it, but they knew where to find it. I just had to track down an old hermit that lived in the middle of nowhere. No biggie. This time. First things first, when I found him, I tried to rob him of the soul gems he had, only to find out they were empty. Serves me right. I chatted him up and he spilled the beans on the location of the scroll. Time to go diving in dwarven ruins. The journey over was uneventful, quickly turning after watching some poor guy get mauled to death by robot spiders. I ran away and then Falmer started to appear. What started as a brisk walk turned into a restoration spam and a ton of jumping. Eventually I made it into a control room to where I could access the Elder Scroll, but my brain turned into mush and I just hammered away at the buttons in front of me. It was a struggle, but eventually worked out. Before heading back, I decided to try and rob a store again, but through the power of the dark arts, my plans were foiled yet again. So I purchased gems the normal way, and then traveled into the throat of the world. I read the scroll and watched the woman get eaten, but to compensate for the trauma, I learned Dragon Rend. I could now combat Alduin, and to test this, he rolled up on me to fight. Luckily, I had enough power to fight Alduin. It was sad to see that the effects seem less random on bigger enemies. It looks like it's just different types of damage. I'm not complaining as I showed Alduin what was what, just would have been nice to add another sweet roll to the bag. After the battle, I had to track down Alduin yet again. Parthenax told me the best way would be to catch a dragon and extort it for info. The only way to do that would be to use Whiterun as a trap. And that would take tons of convincing. And boy, was it a ton of convincing. To sum it up, it was a half hour of running around and getting everyone to meet up in the Greybeard's house to discuss a treaty. It was so boring I got distracted watching a cooking show instead. I learned how to reuse leftovers to make gourmet meals. It was a nice time. After the treaty had been talked out, I could finally proceed. I learned a dragon's name who would know the whereabouts and how I could catch him and extort him. I called him up and surprise, he was pissed. I had to watch as my shout refreshed, but the guards fighting were being burnt to a crisp. Eventually I was able to catch the dragon and get my info. Turns out, this dragon already didn't like Alduin, so he was more than forthcoming. He told me in exchange for freeing him, he would fly me to Alduin's base and I could take the fight to him. The deal was done. We flew over and I had to charge into the keep while dodging Draugr and another dragon. Inside had a puzzle, but because my smooth brain couldn't concentrate, I had to kill the Draugr inside to make sense of it all. I did a sick jump to skip the next puzzle and then made my way outside to the portal that would take me to Sovngarde. Except I didn't plan on the dragon, summoner, and all the other enemies. You can only dodge fire for so long until you need a dirt nap. Second attempt went a lot smoother as I focused on the summoner and his friends. My restoration was on full blast the entire time, but with a couple lucky blasts of the Wabbajack, I pulled through. That was hands down the hardest encounter of the entire run. I jumped into the portal to Sovngarde and made my way to the Hall of Valor, fought the gatekeeper, and then recruited some homies to help me with the big bad himself. We cleared some mist away and Alduin rode up for the final confrontation. I kept him low to the ground while we slowly chipped away at his health. Between dodging meteors and healing, I think I was doing okay. But let's be honest, I was more of an onlooker compared to the 3 meat shields up at the front. We pulled through and Alduin stopped, but didn't die. I went closer to investigate and got flung back. Having a near-death experience, I got back up and gave Alduin a slap of my Wabbajack, and then he exploded. The run was complete. I returned to the world a hero and even got a dragon as a pound mate for further adventures. With nothing more to do, I did as every hero does. I whirlwind dashed off the cliff, cementing myself in legend. This run was a lot of fun, and the randomness really spiced up Skyrim's lackluster combat system. I think for the next video I'll do something in Fallout 4 to change up the game variety just a bit. As always, if you enjoyed this run, make sure to tell me so in the comments below and subscribe to learn of future video uploads. A ton of time goes into these, and with that, I'll see you in the next one.